Welcome back to channel. Have you ever found yourself desperately praying for something? Healing, financial breakthrough, relationship restoration, only to feel like your words are disappearing into thin air. What if everything you've been taught about prayer has been fundamentally misunderstood for centuries? This is not just another spiritual teaching. This revelation could completely transform your relationship with the divine and unlock experiences that have eluded you despite years of sincere practice. Has this ever happened to you? You create a sacred space, light candles, perhaps even kneel or bow your head speaking words of earnest petition to the heavens, and then wake up the next morning to find your circumstances completely unchanged. There's a profound reason for that, and it has nothing to do with your worthiness or the sincerity of your intentions. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world, and if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. For generations, millions of spiritual seekers across faith traditions have approached prayer as a transaction, a way to persuade an external deity to intervene in their circumstances. They've been taught that if they find the right words, the proper posture, or generate enough emotional intensity, their prayers will finally work. This fundamental misinterpretation has created endless frustration and even caused many to abandon their spiritual practice altogether. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover might completely transform how you understand the purpose of prayer. The shocking truth is that the greatest obstacle to effective spiritual communion isn't in your environment or your technique, it's in your consciousness. Your mind races with worries about tomorrow, regrets about yesterday, endless to-do lists, relationship concerns, and desires that feel increasingly urgent. This constant internal chatter creates an impenetrable barrier between you and the still small voice of truth that has always been present within you. The true purpose of prayer isn't to change external circumstances first, but to shift your awareness to a dimension where solutions already exist. What if prayer isn't about getting something you don't have, but recognizing what has always been present? What if the breakthrough you seek isn't waiting for you in some distant future, but is available right now, obscured only by mental noise you've been taught to ignore? Imagine moving through each day from a place of inner stillness that remains unshaken by external circumstances. Imagine accessing infinite wisdom that bypasses your intellectual understanding and connects you directly with divine intelligence. This isn't some mystical state reserved for monks or spiritual masters. It's your natural inheritance that has been hidden behind centuries of misguided teaching about what prayer really is. The revelation that's transforming spiritual seekers worldwide is that true prayer isn't another achievement to strive for or technique to master. This insight completely shifts the paradigm from effort to recognition. Most of us have been taught that spiritual growth is like climbing a ladder, each rung representing another practice, discipline, or insight we must attain. But what if the entire journey isn't about ascending but awakening to what already exists? If these insights about prayer and stillness have resonated with you, subscribe to join our community of spiritual seekers. Together we'll continue exploring the timeless wisdom that transforms not just our spiritual practice, but our entire experience of life. This hidden truth reveals that the transformative power of prayer emerges when your human mind becomes quiet, enough for divine reality to impress itself upon your awareness. Think of it as the difference between creating music and removing the obstacles that prevent you from hearing the symphony that's already playing. The breakthrough comes not through spiritual achievement, but through spiritual receptivity. The ancient wisdom teachings weren't inviting us to construct something new, but to recognize something eternal. This subtle shift in understanding completely revolutionizes your approach to prayer. Rather than asking, "What must I do to get what I need?" you begin asking, "What is preventing me from recognizing what is already here?" Now I want to go even deeper into this topic by examining what Jesus truly meant when he said, "The kingdom of God is within you." This wasn't merely poetic language, but a precise description of reality. The divine isn't speaking to you through noise and drama, through external signs or supernatural displays. It communicates through the quiet certainty that emerges when your personal thinking subsides. This revelation completely transforms your understanding of spiritual growth. The journey isn't about acquiring something you lack, More wisdom, more peace, more abundance. The fundamental obstacle is your inability to recognize what you already possess. This insight creates a profound paradigm shift in consciousness. Instead of approaching prayer as a beggar seeking favors, you approach as an heir recognizing your inheritance. Think of your consciousness as a vast kingdom with infinite resources, wisdom, and possibility. Every quality you've been seeking, peace, guidance, abundance, wholeness, already exists within this inner realm, not as future potentials to be achieved through spiritual effort, but as present realities to be recognized through stillness. The transformation begins when you realize that the noise in your mind, the constant analysis, judgment, and commentary, creates a veil that obscures your awareness of this inner kingdom. Prayer becomes the practice of allowing this veil to temporarily part so you can glimpse what has always been there. If you're beginning to sense that there's a dimension of prayer you've never explored before, a doorway to experiences that traditional approaches have never delivered, write in the comments. The kingdom within is awakening. Let's continue this journey of discovery together as we explore what happens when you approach prayer not as a means of getting what you want, but as recognition of what already is. This revelation has profound implications for your daily experience. Consider what it would mean to truly understand that your consciousness isn't just a passive observer of reality, but a vast kingdom containing infinite resources. The ancient spiritual masters weren't speaking in metaphors when they described this inner realm. They were offering precise instructions for accessing a dimension of being that transcends material limitations. The revolutionary insight is that this inner kingdom already contains everything you need for a fulfilled life. Wisdom for decisions, peace during challenges, inspiration for creativity, and guidance for your journey. These resources aren't future potentials to be achieved through spiritual striving, but present realities waiting to be recognized through stillness. This completely transforms your relationship with prayer from desperate pleading to profound recognition. Behind the scenes of every authentic spiritual tradition, this truth has been preserved by those who discovered that the journey isn't about becoming something different, but unveiling what has always been true. The veil between you and this awareness isn't physical distance, but perceptual blindness maintained by habitual thinking patterns. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic by examining what prevents most people from experiencing this inner kingdom despite years of spiritual practice. Have you noticed how your mind gravitates toward problems? This isn't a personal failing, it's a collective mindset that dramatically impacts your ability to pray effectively. Those people live with their attention fixated on problems, constantly analyzing what's wrong, what's missing, or what hurts in their lives. This problem-focused awareness isn't merely noticing difficulties, it's a frequency of consciousness that actually reinforces the very conditions you're trying to change. The hidden revelation that transforms prayer is understanding that this mindset keeps you locked in the very frequency that created the problem in the first place. Effective prayer elevates you beyond this material perception into a dimension of consciousness where solutions already exist. When you're truly still, your awareness rises above the limitations of problem-focused thinking into the consciousness where wholeness is already established. This isn't positive thinking or wishful imagination. It's accessing a level of mind where the fragmentation of material experience yields to the unity of spiritual awareness. Consider the impact of this revelation on your approach to challenges. Instead of struggling to solve problems at the level where they appear, authentic prayer gives you access to insights and resources from a higher plane of consciousness, where the problem doesn't exist in the same form. The transformation isn't in the problem, but in the consciousness perceiving it. If you're beginning to recognize how your own problem-focused awareness might be creating a barrier between you and the inner kingdom of infinite resources, write in the comments, shifting my perception. This awareness alone begins to dissolve the very patterns that have limited your spiritual experience. What might surprise you most about this spiritual journey is that the transformation from material perception to spiritual awareness doesn't require years of arduous practice, special abilities, or esoteric knowledge. The breakthrough comes through a simple yet profound shift in where you place your attention. This revelation completely redefines what we understand about spiritual growth. It's not about building something new, but redirecting awareness to what already exists. This mindset shift has created remarkable transformations for countless individuals. Problems that seemed insurmountable at the human level, health conditions that resisted treatment, financial situations that appeared hopeless, relationship challenges that defied resolution, dissolved naturally when approached from spiritual stillness. Not because circumstances magically changed, but because perception shifted to a level of consciousness where solutions already existed, but had been invisible to problem-focused awareness. The remarkable aspect of this practice is that it works not by changing external conditions first, but by transforming your perception. When perception shifts, experience naturally follows. Your external world begins to reflect the stillness you've discovered within. Not because you've manipulated circumstances, but because you're seeing from a different dimension of consciousness. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by addressing a common misconception that creates frustration for many spiritual seekers. Many people misunderstand stillness, believing it to be an empty mental state or the complete absence of thought. This misconception has led countless individuals to struggle with emptying their minds only to find thoughts constantly intruding, creating a sense of failure in their prayer practice. The breakthrough comes when you realize that true prayer isn't emptiness, it's receptivity. Think of your consciousness not as a creator, but as a receiver. In genuine stillness, you become a clear channel for divine intelligence to flow through effortlessly. This shift in understanding completely revolutionizes your approach to prayer, because you're no longer trying to force yourself into an artificial state of mental blankness. Instead, you're cultivating an open receptivity to the wisdom that divine mind is already speaking. The analogy that perfectly illustrates this is a radio receiver. The music is already broadcasting on every frequency. When you practice stillness in prayer, you're not creating the music. You're simply adjusting your inner dial to receive what is already being transmitted on the frequency of spirit. This perspective removes the strain from prayer, transforming it from effort into reception. This revelation fundamentally changes your relationship with the divine. Prayer becomes less about what you do and more about what you allow, less about what you say and more about how you listen. The quality of receptivity opens doors to guidance, insight, and peace that striving could never produce. If you're beginning to sense how this perspective could transform your approach to prayer, moving it from struggle to receptivity, write in the comments, becoming a receiver. This simple shift from trying to create connection to allowing what already exists might be the very key that unlocks experiences that have eluded you despite years of sincere practice. Here's where we discover the most fundamental obstacle that prevents effective prayer. What spiritual masters have called the separated self-illusion. This deeply ingrained belief that you exist as a separate entity, apart from divine presence, has created an invisible barrier that undermines almost all spiritual practice. This core misconception is so embedded in our cultural mindset that it shapes our approach to prayer without our conscious awareness. Think about it. Most people pray, meditate, or practice stillness as if they are separate beings trying to connect with something outside themselves. This paradigm creates a framework where prayer becomes an attempt to bridge an imaginary gap. It's like trying to connect to Wi-Fi while believing your device has no receiver. This revelation completely transforms your understanding of what prayer actually is. The revolutionary shift occurs when stillness becomes a recognition of your oneness with infinite source, rather than an attempt to bridge an imaginary gap. You're not separate from the divine presence you seek to know. You're an individualized expression of it. This truth transforms prayer from a technique into a recognition of what already is. Subscribe to continue this journey of spiritual discovery with me. Each video uncovers hidden truths that have been preserved by mystics throughout the ages, but often overlooked in contemporary teaching. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic by exploring what spiritual teachers have called the principle of divine already, a revolutionary insight that completely reshapes your entire approach to prayer. This principle affirms that God's nature and presence already exists in complete fullness, whether or not human consciousness recognizes it. This revelation utterly transforms how we understand spiritual practice. Your stillness in prayer doesn't create divine presence. It simply allows you to perceive what has never been absent. It's like drawing back a curtain to reveal sunlight that was always shining. The sunlight doesn't begin when you open the curtain. It was always there waiting to be acknowledged. The mindset shift this creates is profound. Prayer transforms from a desperate struggle to change reality into a peaceful alignment with what eternally is. This understanding releases the anxiety and strain that often accompany spiritual practice, replacing it with a deep sense of rest in divine all-readiness. You're not trying to make something happen through spiritual effort. You're allowing yourself to recognize what has always been true. This isn't just abstract philosophy. It creates tangible transformations in people's lives, across every dimension of experience. The journey of prayer becomes not about adding something new to your life, but removing the obstacles to recognizing what is already present in its fullness. This principle dissolves the desperate quality that often characterizes spiritual seeking, replacing it with peaceful recognition. If this revelation about the divine already is starting to illuminate your understanding of why traditional prayer often feels like speaking into a void, write in the comments, "I am not separate." This recognition might be the missing key that transforms your entire relationship with prayer and divine presence. These principles might seem abstract, but their impact on real lives reveals their transformative power. Consider Helen's journey, which perfectly illustrates how this revelation changes everything. For years, Helen had sought financial breakthrough affirmations, visualizations, and desperate prayers. She attended every prosperity workshop, repeated affirmations daily, and believed she was doing everything right. Yet her bank account remained empty, and opportunities seemed to pass her by. The turning point came when Helen discovered the hidden truth about prayer. She realized that her frantic spiritual activity was actually reinforcing her consciousness of lack. Each affirmation subtly emphasized what she didn't have. With this insight, Helen made a radical change in her approach. She stopped all the spiritual techniques and instead began daily periods of quiet recognition of divine completeness. For 2 months, she simply sat in stillness for 20 minutes each day, not asking for anything but resting in the awareness of infinite abundance as the very nature of reality. She stopped obsessively checking her bank balance and worrying about bills. Instead of focusing on what was missing, she centered her awareness on the completeness that already existed in divine mind. The results unfolded naturally. Within 3 months, Helen received an unexpected job offer with double her previous salary. An investment she had forgotten about matured with surprising returns. Opportunities appeared that had always been there, but she had been too anxious to notice. The transformation came not through frantically trying to manifest abundance, but through the receptive awareness that comes from true stillness. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic by exploring how this principle applies to physical well-being. Consider Marcus, whose journey reveals the hidden mechanism behind genuine healing. After suffering with chronic pain for 7 years, Marcus had tried everything: medications, alternative therapies, and countless healing modalities. He had prayed desperately for relief, visited healers, and attempted every spiritual technique he could find. Each time the pain returned, his faith diminished along with his hope. The breakthrough in Marcus's journey came when he realized he had been approaching healing as a battle, constantly fighting against his condition, begging God to fix a broken body, which ironically kept his consciousness locked in the belief that something was fundamentally wrong. This revelation completely transformed his approach to healing. Instead of praying for his pain to disappear, Marcus began spending 30 minutes each day in quiet recognition of spiritual wholeness. He shifted his focus from the material body that seemed damaged to the spiritual reality where perfection is already established. This wasn't denial. When pain appeared, he didn't pretend it wasn't there, but he refused to give it power through constant attention and fear. The impact was gradual but unmistakable. Over 6 months, the pain episodes decreased in both frequency and intensity. But something even more remarkable happened. Marcus discovered an inner peace that remained stable regardless of physical sensations. He had accessed a level of consciousness that transcended the physical condition entirely. If you've experienced this struggle between battling for healing and recognizing wholeness, write in the comments, "Wholeness precedes healing." This shift in consciousness might be the missing element in your own journey toward well-being. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic by exploring a powerful practice that transforms traditional prayer into a completely different experience. One of the most effective approaches is a practice called resting in the Word. This technique completely redefines what we understand about spiritual communion by shifting the focus from mental effort to spiritual receptivity. In this approach, instead of mentally struggling with a problem or repeating affirmations about what you want to change, You select a spiritual truth that addresses the consciousness behind your situation and quietly abide in that truth. For example, if you're facing a health challenge rather than focusing on the condition itself, you might rest in the truth that wholeness is the eternal nature of divine being, which is your true identity. The revelation here is that you're not using the spiritual truth as a tool to fix something. Instead, you're allowing your consciousness to marinate in reality until that reality becomes more substantial to you than the problem. This isn't mechanical repetition, but conscious dwelling in spiritual truth. The transformation occurs naturally as your awareness shifts from problem consciousness to truth consciousness. This approach prevents prayer from becoming another form of mental striving. Many spiritual practices inadvertently create more mental activity rather than less, analyzing, affirming, visualizing, and constantly checking for results. Resting in the Word bypasses this trap by emphasizing receptivity over activity. The mindset shift is subtle but profound. Rather than approaching spiritual practice as something you do to get results, you recognize it as a state of consciousness you allow yourself to enter. Another hidden truth that completely transforms prayer is the power of what spiritual teachers call impersonal prayer. Most spiritual practice remains limited by intense personal focus. My healing, my financial situation, my relationship problems. This personal focus actually constrains what can be received because it keeps consciousness small and self-centered. Impersonal prayer expands your awareness beyond personal concerns. In this approach, you recognize divine principles that are true for everyone everywhere, not just for you. You don't pray for your healing, but acknowledge that wholeness is the nature of all being. You don't ask for your supply, but recognize that infinite abundance is the very fabric of universal reality. This approach seems counterintuitive at first. How can focusing on universal principles, rather than my specific needs, possibly help me? The revelation is that when you rise into universal consciousness, your personal experience automatically begins to reflect the universal truth you've contacted. By expanding beyond the limited personal sense, you access the infinite resources of impersonal divine mind. The journey from personal to universal awareness represents one of the most significant transformations in spiritual development. It's a shift from seeing yourself as a separate entity with personal problems to recognizing yourself as an expression of universal principles that transcend individuality. This expansion of consciousness opens doors to possibilities that remain closed to purely personal prayer. If you're beginning to sense how shifting from personal focus to universal awareness might transform your experience of prayer, write in the comments, "From personal to universal." This expansion of consciousness might be the very breakthrough that transforms prayer from desperate pleading to spiritual recognition. One of the most significant obstacles to experiencing the true power of prayer is our attachment to mental pictures. When we approach spiritual practice, our human mind immediately creates detailed images of how answers should look, when they should arrive, and what form they should take. Have you noticed how specific your expectations become when you're seeking a solution? This mental imaging happens almost automatically, often without our conscious awareness. What many spiritual seekers discover is that these mental pictures actually become barriers that prevent us from receiving what divine intelligence is already providing. When we insist that our healing must come through a particular treatment, that our financial supply must appear through a specific channel, or that our relationship must unfold according to a predetermined script, we close ourselves to countless other possibilities. The hidden truth is that divine mind has infinite ways to provide what you need. Your limited human thinking can only conceive of a few possibilities based on past experience and current knowledge. True prayer includes holding your preferences lightly, stating your need clearly, but remaining open to solutions beyond what you could imagine. This doesn't mean you abandon all desires or preferences. It means you approach them with an open hand rather than a clenched fist. You might articulate your need or question clearly, then add silently, "This or something better for the highest good." This mindset creates the receptive state where unexpected and often superior solutions can emerge. Gregory, a businessman facing bankruptcy, discovered this principle when traditional solutions failed him. Instead of desperately clinging to his mental picture of how his business should be saved, he practiced stillness, releasing his specific demands and opening to wisdom beyond his limited perspective. The solution that eventually emerged looked nothing like what he had imagined, yet created a more sustainable business than he had before the crisis. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic by exploring what happens when prayer transforms from something you do to something you are. When you truly understand the principles we've been exploring, life's entire landscape transforms. Stillness becomes your natural state, not something you occasionally practice, but the very foundation of your moment-by-moment experience. This shift isn't about adding more spiritual practices to your already busy life. It's about recognizing the sacred nature of your everyday existence. The stillness that spiritual teachers have spoken of for centuries isn't passive resignation, but active recognition of what already is. It's the moment-by-moment awareness that divine intelligence lives as you, through you, and all around you. This recognition dissolves the artificial barriers between sacred and secular, between spiritual practice and daily living. Ordinary experiences, preparing a meal, having a conversation, solving a work challenge, transform into opportunities for spiritual awareness. The beauty of this teaching lies in its simplicity and accessibility. You don't need special abilities, years of intensive training, or complex rituals to experience it. If something in this message has sparked a recognition in you, perhaps a sense that you already knew these truths but had forgotten them, write "Divine Stillness awakens in me" in the comments below. This remembrance might be the very doorway to experiencing prayer in a dimension you've always sensed but never fully accessed. My hope is that something in this message has sparked a recognition in you, perhaps a sense that the true purpose of prayer has been within your reach all along, waiting only for this shift in understanding. The journey we've explored today isn't about mastering new techniques, but remembering what your soul has always known. If you've resonated with these insights about stillness, receptivity, and the divine already, I'd love to continue this journey of exploration with you. Subscribe to join our community of spiritual seekers who are discovering the transformative power of authentic prayer in an increasingly chaotic world. The principles we've discussed today aren't just concepts to think about, but invitations to a completely different experience of the divine. If this message feels like it was meant specifically for you, as if it's answering questions you've carried within, leave a comment saying, "This message found me at the perfect time." I read every comment and am deeply moved by the stories of transformation that emerge from this community. If you found value in these revelations about prayer, a simple like helps others discover this message who might be struggling with the same questions you've carried. There's a video right here about the forgotten teaching of Jesus that changes everything, that perfectly complements what we've explored today. Click and continue this journey of spiritual discovery with me there. Until we meet again, remember that the stillness you seek has always been within you, waiting only for your recognition. Thanks for watching.